Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. Good to have you back. It is still Tuesday, the 18th of February, and we're going to turn back to housing. And this is a slightly different aspect of housing. It's not construction, but it is lot rent, concerns about lot rent increases. And we are going to have witnesses on this later in the week. But at the moment, I just wanted, we just need opportunities to go through the bills and at least appreciate what their intent is. So, we welcome Pam, wonderful legislative counsel, and take it away.
Sure. Good morning. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. You all had a wonderful President's Day holiday yesterday. I'm here to walk through S34, an act relating to lowering the rate of increase for mobile home lot rents. The bill itself is relatively straightforward, so I will do my best to put it in a little bit of context here. So we're talking about mobile home parks and individuals who live in a mobile home park. They own their home, but they are renting the lot from the mobile home owner, who is then charging the individuals in that circumstance a lot rent, basically to house their home on the lot in the mobile home park. So that's what we're talking about here. There is a section prior to section 1 of this bill, section in statute, that I printed and
right here
had passed out. This is 10 VSA section 6251. It's not in the bill because it's not being amended, but I thought it best to start with that section.
Yes, it sets it up. So
Yes,
this is great.
correct.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yes. So this section here is where it requires that a mobile home park owner has to provide written notice no more than 60 days before the effective date of a proposed lot rent increase. And it requires that that written notification include the amount of the increase, the effective date. You can see this there in 6251 sub A. 1, if the proposed rent increase, 2, the effective date, 3, a copy of the leaseholder's rights pursuant to the sections that we're talking about here, as well as finally percentage of the increase from the current base lot rent. So I'm just making you aware of that section, that this information has to be provided when there is a proposal. Okay. Current law is now we're moving to S34, which is the bill. We're moving to the next section in statute 6252. The current law is that if the proposed lot rent increase is more than 1% above and I'm going to just use shorthand for this, the U.S. Consumer Price Index, which is published by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So if the rent is above 1% over the CPI, okay, then tenants have the right to, and I shouldn't call them tenants, the lot owners, the homeowners have the right to contest or challenge that rent increase. And then at that point, we go through a few different steps. There has to be an attempt at mediation. And if mediation is not successful, then they can potentially go to court after that. What this bill will do very quickly, because it's just one change here on the front page, the rest of it is just some cleanup. What this bill will do is it will it will limit the increase to no more than 1% above the CPI. So current law is if it's above 1% over the CPI, then they go to mediation. If it's 1% above CPI or under, there is no mediation. You just have to accept it. What this will do is it will cap it, and it will say, as you can read on line 12, page 1 of the bill, a mobile home park owner shall not propose a lot rent increase of more than 1% above the US CPI. So that's the key piece of the bill here. It is limiting a mobile home park owner's ability to charge, and it's capping it at 1% above the CPI at this point. And it still allows for the mediation in the event, at this point, it would essentially allow mediation for any lot rent increase. that the homeowners, feel is unreasonable.
So we often get emails from Arthur Hamlin, who has just retired, about the mobile home parks in our areas, who lets us know when the lot rent is proposed to go up even above the allowed amount. And that at the moment is 1% above the CPI.
So right now, the way I would phrase it is, right now, the lot rent increase can be whatever the owner of the park wants it to be. The owner of the park could propose 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%. The owner can propose anything. But if it's above 1% over the CPI, at that point, the mobile homeowners have the authority to contest this.
Right. And they only have 60 days to do it, which is a pretty short order, as I recall.
Less than that, Madam Chair, it is 15 days.
No. Why did I think there were 60 from before?
The
In the statute that you have leading up to it, it has 60 days.
the mobile home park owner has to notify them more than 60 days prior to the rent increase going into effect. And at that point, presumably the mobile home park owners there would then get together, discuss amongst themselves, because it has to be a majority of them have to contest any lot rent increase. So it can't just be a single individual. And so they would then have 15 days after that to contest, or to file with the department a notice to contest. And then at that point, it kicks off the mediation process.
Right.
So you will see this here on the sub 2 on S34. So we're on section 6252. I'm creating this as a sub 2, page 1, line 18. It's if within 15 business days after receipt of the notice, a majority of the affected leaseholders files with the commissioner a written petition and a statement that they dispute the proposed lot rent increase. Then the commissioner sends a list of qualified mediators, and that's where it kicks off the process.
Right. This came to us, the Windsor District. We have 2 mobile home parks where the lot rent increases are going up significantly, and significantly over this allowable amount, which generally, what people seem to adhere to, and which Arthur is in touch with us about a great deal. And there are just real concerns about lot rent increases going up every year, 5, 6, 7, 8%.
And for awareness, the 1% above CPI that was published, the department publishes this annually. They published it in October of 2024. I believe they publish it for a calendar year basis. So I think for 2025, that 1% threshold is 5.4%. So the CPI would be 4.4%. They're allowing that 1% above that, which is what the current statute allows. So if the lot rent increases 5.4% or under, then there is no authority for the tenants to contest. If it's above that, then they can challenge it under current law. What this bill would do is amend it to say you cannot go above that 5.4%.
Right. You can only amend it up to 1% and then above that. And the 15 days strikes me as also a very short time to organize a park with a petition.
It is business days.
It's still a pretty tight timeline, depending on the size of the park. So it strikes me that that's something we could also look at, is the size. Thomas.
I agree with you. 15 days seems unreasonable. My concern with capping this is, and I don't know how these lots are managed, but if a major sewer, stormwater, other big cost comes onto this property, I could imagine with this cap that they just won't be able to fix it. And then you could have people living in sewage backlogs and exposed sewer spaces.
Great point. I will highlight that I did not mention, as we were kind of starting the walkthrough, when you look at the section 6251, the piece of paper that I handed out, you look in the sub B, There is the ability of the mobile home park owner to request a surcharge for capital improvements that is above and beyond or separate from the lot rent increase itself. And so my reading of the amendment that you have here would not prohibit a mobile home park owner from continuing to charge a surcharge. But what's key here is, the surcharge has to terminate at some point when the costs of the capital improvement have been recovered. That's there in the sub B.
Right.
So I don't think if this were to go into effect, I think a mobile home park owner would still have the ability to make those investments and charge those to the owners of the mobile homes.
Thanks, David.
What about the caveat that lot ownership or a park ownership changes hands? Now there's a new mortgage, essentially mortgage for land. Those costs increase. The new owner is going to want to recoup his own mortgage costs. It's not, I agree completely with the infrastructure. And I'm glad to see that there's some language on that, but just simply changing hands.
So I will want to do a little more investigation in this. This is a new area for me, so I will want to double check my work here. But when you go into the next section, which is section 6253, which I did not bring with me, I apologize for that. This is the section that deals with if they cannot mediate successfully, then the mobile home owners have the ability to go to court. They can take the park owner into court to challenge the lot rent. There is a subsection here which says the lot.
You mean the owners of the mobile homes?
Correct. Can take the mobile home park owner into court. There's a section here that says the lot rent increase shall be exempt from that section if it's an increase that results from the sale of a mobile home park. So what I'm worried about there, and this is where I want to do a little more digging, is it's exempting it from that section. So it's not exempting it from the 6252 cap if this were to pass and go into effect. So I do want to do a little kind of cross-referencing to be able to address your concerns.
Yeah.
If I could, so you're referencing, or the bill references a US CPI. Is there a Vermont CPI?
Outside of my area of expertise to answer, I do not believe so. The CPI is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. My understanding is I'm not sure that they developed them on a state level to that.
We base a lot of
But-
state increases on CPI. Our pay and our per diems and stuff are all based on CPI. Yeah, Tom.
Did I hear you say that should this go into effect, that they would effectively be no a right of appeal if it's because it wouldn't be above the 1% over CPI? And that if I was an owner of this, I would probably then just always increase it that 1% plus the CPI every year, regardless of what my expenses are.
The way I read the change, if it were to go into effect, the mobile home owners could challenge any increase through the current process that exists.
Even if
Even if it was lower than the CPI, I think that the way that the language is being altered, they would still be able to challenge it. But then, I think, your mobile home park owner is going to be able to utilize that as a defense. It's under the consumer price index increase, which is referenced here. And I think, they're going to raise that defense with the mediation.
But you mentioned that in the event that mediation is unfavorable to mobile home owners, they have the right to go to court. Does the mobile home park owner also have the equivalent right? I would assume. Good question.
The way I read section 6253, the mobile home park owner does not have the ability to challenge. My understanding of the way this reads, you go to mediation, and if the parties are not able to agree to the mediation, mediator comes in and says, you proposed it to be 7%, and I think that that's too much. You guys should come to an agreement, and it should be 6%. And I don't know what happens in the event that the mobile home park owner does not agree to that. I don't know if it defaults back to what the mobile home park owner would has requested, and then the mobile home owners have the ability to go to court at that point. I'll probably defer to the department on this piece because they're the ones that
I
provide.
think that's a question I would like to know the answer to,
Yes, sir.
because again, in the event that there's not an equal right to appeal, I don't think that's necessarily fair. On the one hand, if it's uncertain, I think that's even worse.
So we'll have more on this. Keisha.
I mean, just so that, I don't know if people are sharing their up or down overall.
And we're having more on this on Thursday because we have the department coming in to talk about it, and we're going to get a better picture of what this is. But
Okay, I mean, I do want to make sure I understand and I'm clear that this is a rent cap. This would apply to mobile home co-op as well, if the owner is a cooperative.
I see no reason why I wouldn't, but I
Right.
would want to double check the definitions to make
Yeah.
sure that is the case.
So, I mean, I just want to make sure we go into this clear-eyed that we want mobile home parks and lots to be affordable for everyone. Rent caps have a lot of unintended economic consequences, like making it more expensive for someone to access first-time rental or ownership. If they own their mobile home and they're putting it on a rental lot in a park, and the mobile home park owner selling the park altogether. So we've dealt with a lot of access issues to mobile home parks. I think it would be nice if we dealt with the cost and expense side of mobile home parks. We haven't really given that a lot of testimony. This is a lot of testimony for one very blunt instrument, and not a lot on the other ways we're trying to support mobile home parks and manufactured housing.
but we're also trying to support people staying in their mobile home parks, and there are the composition of the people who live in mobile home parks. I think that's a piece of what we want to hear from. I've heard from a lot of seniors in my neck of the woods for whom these increases, these steady drumbeat every year of 5, 6, and higher % increases in lot rent have been really challenging. And this is to get that conversation going and to understand what we could do to help them, independent of infrastructure, what we could do to help them continue to afford,
I just hope we
staying
make
in
sure
these
it's
parks.
it's a broad conversation about how we support the investment in and access to mobile home parks. Because just capping the rent might have the unintended consequence of fewer mobile home parks in the future.
And that's why we're going to hear from CVOEO.
Where someone could sell that lot and build luxury housing. I mean, that's, I just really want to make sure that we're looking at the holistic picture of mobile home and manufactured home access.
I'm hoping before we do anything, as we go through this process, that's what we do. We will look at the whole picture. This was just a walkthrough, just to give you just one of the housing things we have on the wall. So, thank you, Cam.
I hear that you're having the department in. I'll also try to touch base with them because I want to make sure I get answers to these two questions in particular.
That would be great.
That have been asked on those specific related to the language in the bill and the sections, and be happy to come back on Thursday with it as well to discuss.
And we certainly don't want to do anything that undermines our mobile home parks in any way. This was really designed as a conversation starter for protecting the people who are in them from increases that they can't afford.
I did bring with me, in case anyone is interested, a memo that the department sent out to mobile home park owners related to the lot rent increase for 2025. So I'll leave that with your committee assistant in case.
Oh, great.
anyone
We can
wants to
post that.
see it. This is on their website. That's where I pulled it from. This is where it has the 5.4%, which would be the 1% above CPI threshold that is currently.
So we've already sent out a notice.
This was sent out in October, and my understanding is it
For this year.
applies to calendar year 2025.
For the
Informing-
mediation option.
Right, informing the mobile home park owners that if their lot rent increase is proposed above 5.4%, that is the threshold that, the mobile homeowners could then challenge.
Right, because it's 4.4 plus the 1%.
Yes. So,
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We are going to turn to another aspect of our housing folks and, which is our brownfield discussion. Tom Kennedy, why don't you come and join us? And David is here as well.
Hello.
David, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. And
Good morning.
good morning. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you know, I know you know three of us, but I don't know if you, so let's just go around and introduce our two.
Sure. Let me just introduce myself first, or
Sure, you can introduce yourself first.
I'm Tom Kennedy. I'm the Director of Community Development at Mount Scottney Regional Planning Commission, and we're located in Scottsdale, Vermont.
Nice to meet you, Tom. I'm Tom Chittenden. I represent the southeast area of Chittenden County.
Keisha, hi.
Allison.
Good morning, Dave Weeks, representing Rutland County.
Thank you.
Great. And just for new members up to the committee, Tom has carried the water, as it were, on brownfield for those regional planners for a while. And so it's welcome back as we discuss brownfields and the urgency and so they're being cleaned up so that we can have more housing in those key areas.
Great. So just to start off, all 11 regional planning commissions in Vermont participate in the brownfield program. And it varies depending on your location. Some are more rural areas such as Gadsden County, don't have as many projects. Where I am with the Springfield, Windsor area, David area, and Rutland, are very deeply involved in brownfields based on our economic history, and the like. We work with the Department of Environmental Conservation very, very closely through the program which we're going to talk about. We need to get permission from them to actually go forward with the program. Regional Planning Commission have three sources of funding for assessment, and that is through the EPA, through the Agency of Commerce program, and through a dedicated program that DEC manages. One of the things that we need to do when we select projects is to make sure that the project that we're trying to fund, there is not what we call a responsible party, which is you were not the owner that created the contamination or whatever. So what the state of Vermont has established is what we call the BRELA program. Has everyone heard of that?
Yeah.
So it's called the Brownfield Reuse Environmental Liability Limitations Program. And basically what that is if you are an innocent purchaser, you don't have liability. It protects you with liability protection program.
An innocent purchaser could be a purchaser who knows it's a brownfield, but is purchasing it with the hopes of cleaning it up, right?
That's correct. But
Eyes wide
no
open.
one can come back, a property owner 10 years down the road after you purchased it and say, oh, I have contamination on my property, you need to go pay for it. You would not be responsible for doing that. They would use the funds in the BRELA program to take care of that. I'm keeping this very, very basic. This gets very complex really, really quickly. So and let me just give you a little bit of how the brownfields works. And I know we don't have much time on to keep for your lunch, is basically when we talk about assessment, there's a phase one, which is basically before you buy the property, before most banks will give you a mortgage, you need to do a phase one. And basically what that is, it is a history of the property, what occurred on that property. I don't know if you've heard of these Sanborn maps. They look at these old fashioned maps and they could see. And what they're looking for is what they call RECs, which is recognized environmental contaminants. If you have a REC on a property, that raises a flag. If your property is clean, then you're done with the assessment aspect of it, and you can just move forward. If a wreck is found, you then go to what we call phase two. Phase two could be something as simple
So
as
sorry, if it's clean, what do you go to?
you're done,
Oh, done altogether.
done altogether.
And you can just proceed with development.
Proceed with what you want to do. In most commercial and industrial settings in Vermont, you never
Yeah.
stop at phase one.
Right.
There's no
we had-
finger.
Because of air pollution and things like that, you get what we call tainted soils or urban soils. And generally they need to be removed, and usually down to 6 to 8
Another
inches.
subject that we're chatting about this.
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
So if you have, what we call urban soils, and they're tested at a certain level, the standard procedure is you will remove those soils between 6 and 8 inches. You then put down a mat, and then you cover them with a clean soil. For those tainted soils, and again, I'm not being very professionally or as a characterization, generally it goes to Casella's landfill in Coventry. They're not expensive to get rid of, but the expense is transporting them up to Coventry. If you're in Bennington and you gotta move them, it costs you more to transport the things than it
Right.
does to dispose of them.
Right. And not to, sorry, I
Yes.
mean, part of the expense the state needs to start thinking about is the diminishing landfill space in Coventry. That is a finite resource. And if they have to start shipping it out of state, that's a huge expense. And that's something that both economic development and natural resources need to take into account.
Here, here.
So generally what happens is at the landfill, they call it cover. So they use it for average daily cover. So when, you put the trash down there, you gotta cover the trash, and they use that for that. So the paint sauce, that's very, very common. Two projects, an example, I just use, pick on Windsor. We're doing an apartment building in downtown Windsor. We had to remove a bunch of soil before we built the thing. Even though you're gonna have an impervious surface above it, you still gotta remove this.
Why? Why?
Because, I mean, because that's the standard, that's what they want you to do.
But why?
Talk to DC, I'm not the scientist, so they have their reasons for it, and I'm not trying to make fun of them. That's just procedure, and that's how.
So it's all urban areas in the state,
Pretty much,
all in Chittenden County.
And other states do this?
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
you're not alone.
what differs is the standard.
Yes.
The standards.
Absolutely.
So
Very different threshold.
the standard in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire, maybe, where most likely is different than Vermont.
It is.
The dirt, we're talking about dirt here,
We're
right?
talking about,
Okay, dirt.
we're talking about,
Well,
we're talking about gravel,
some of which is dirtier than other
right? So,
and more tainted. And is there a difference between what you're calling urban soils and tainted soils?
no,
No, that is,
it's, I'm
I just
just,
wanted.
so some of them are very simple to get rid of. Some of them may have arsenic in them. They may have higher levels of concentration that they may have to go to a special landfill. It all depends on the use that was occurring at the time. Some of them have oils in them. I mean, it could be a lot of different things. So phase two then is you characterize the area. What we mean by characterize the area is they can do soil sampling, they can do soil vapor sampling, they could say there is something going on, and they do a number of drilling to capture what's the extent, if there's a plume, for instance, what's the extent of that plume? And so they characterize that. Those types of things can get very, very expensive. I mean, it is not unheard of to spend $250,000 on just doing the sampling and the testing to figure out where you're at.
Can I-
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand from the chair's perspective, similar to Senator Weeks' question earlier. We're talking about housing, brownfield. Are we trying to make a case for more financial investment? Because this testimony underscores for me that we should be looking at reducing the cost of remediation primarily and not putting more money into a program that is shipping dirt to Coventry.
So, all right,
Unless you
so
want
let
to
me,
change.
let me go,
I mean,
but,
you're
no,
making it
no,
sound
let
like
me
we're
go
really
specific to the,
wasting
to
some
the
money here.
action. In the governor's recommend, he's asking for $2 million.
Mhm,
For revolving.
For revolving.
mhm.
It is unclear to me whether or not it is as a loan or it's for a grant. Traditionally, over the last 3 years, it's been always grant funds.
And we had a lot.
Grant funds are incredibly important when you're trying to redevelop a site. So what we generally do is a mixture of grants and loans for the more expensive.
Right.
It is very, very difficult to attract private investment when they have these very, very large brownfield centers. I mean, you can have a cleanup that costs $3, $4, $5 million before you even put a backhoe in the ground.
But how
So-
much of that cost is Vermont laws that go above and beyond EPA standards?
I'm going to answer your question, but I'm not going to directly answer your question. So we have to create what we call a corrective action.
Mm-hmm,
The corrective action plan has to go to EPA.
mm-hmm.
EPA blesses it. So we're meeting EPA's standard when we come for a lot of these things.
Well, so there's legislation looking at corrective action plans having to consider remediation before trucking and removal of the soil. So the problem is, I mean, you have housing folks, et cetera, who are saying this is the cost for us to meet the standard of removing the soil.
Right.
And I would hope that you all in the planning commission world or the planning world are looking at how much of that cost is because of our higher threshold. That has to, I mean, we're asking A&R for that information, so.
So we are following the I rule. We're following these policies. We're not, because we're on the ground doing the work. We're trying to get the project done. So at this juncture, we're just doing what we're being told we need to do and finding the money to be able to do it. I think your discussion is more talking with Matt Chapman and others at
Absolutely.
DEC as far as it. And we will do whatever they tell us to do. And if you can figure out a cheaper way to do it, that's fabulous, you
Yeah,
know, but right now we don't. And let me just go to this chart really, really quick. If you look,
And then Rand.
so this chart that I sent out is basically
Oh, yeah, here.
3 years. So
This is what you want to.
yes. The Montesquieu Regional Planning Commission was asked by VAPTA, which is the Association of All Regional Planning Commissions, to administer this brownfield assessment program that you folks have been funding for the last 3 years. What you have here is just a chart of how we're spending it. We are spending this money as quickly as we get it.
Right.
Okay. And we
But
are.
not just on soil remediation.
No,
But
we're
then
doing a
on
lot of good
stuff.
stuff. We're doing a lot of housing stuff. You know, we're doing lots of stuff. But if you look at it, we've spent all the money that was granted to us in FY 22-23. We have spent almost all the money in FY 23-24, and now we just into now FY 25, and we've already spent half of it. So we're
And
running
remind me, what was our appropriation for
$1 million.
Just
So
a
we've been
million?
getting $1 million a year, and 990,000 of it goes out, and we get $10,000 to administer $1 million program.
But are you going to give us a breakdown of how you spend the money? I don't
So-
need that.
So you want by project?
I want line items of some kind. I mean, you're saying you spend it on a lot of good stuff. I don't know what. I don't know what it's being spent on, like how much is being spent on shipping dirt, how much is being spent on.
Oh, I'm not gonna, that. I can tell you with difficulty the projects we're working on, but we would have to break open every invoice from all these different projects to see how much it was for transportation of dirt or that would be quite an effort to do that. I'm not trying to make excuses.
Can you do one?
Oh, sure.
We could do the Windsor one.
Yeah,
I can do 2 Windsor ones. Yeah.
So if we could get the 2 Windsor ones, that would be interesting.
Sure.
But I want us to all be clear that the brown can clean up. Soil remediation is a piece of it, but it's not all of it.
It's a very small part of it,
Thank you. So,
very small.
we don't have that breakdown.
right, but he,
No, but I
manage it,
know
so
from
you
experience, it's dealing with PCBs and think that's where you start to get into a lot of that. Asbestos is incredibly expensive.
Right.
So,
and
The question is, in the Vermont standards that we use to determine how brownfield is cleaned up, is different perhaps than it might be in some other states. I know you have an
so
EPA standard.
there's a federal standard that everybody follows.
Understood.
right,
And
that's
then
the
there's,
EPA.
then there is a state standard. And yes, in certain areas, soils is one of them, that there's variability in that.
And how
But
would
as
it
far as
have
like
been-
PCBs and things like this, there's, and again, it's just more of a Matt Chapman, other folks, answer the question is, that probably doesn't vary very much, but the soil's definitely fixed. Yes.
So what I'm actually getting at is in some of these areas, are Vermont standards more stringent than in other states, or are we sort of average? If you were able to even comment to that extent?
So I think we are, our standard is higher for soils than surrounding states. But I don't know exactly.
Well,
I sort of wasn't prepared in my testimony.
All right,
I'm dealing with
you may not be the
standards.
person, the right.
And also I want to
person.
give David a chance too, so.
And that's fine.
yeah.
It's just what I would like to know at some point is, are our standards reasonable?
Yeah.
Are they consistent with what others are doing, or are they substantially different? If they are substantially different and more expensive, that's what I would like to drill down. Because I notice we have a tendency sometimes to do that in other things. And whether we do here or not, I don't know, but I would like to know.
Okay,
So, if you can just go to the small box to the right, and you'll get a sense of the different types of projects that we're doing. So we've worked on, the project type, commercial, residential, mixed use, industrial. So roughly about 70 of those. And then you'll see the different phases that we've done. So we've done different, 140 different types of brownfield assessment, be it a phase 1, a phase 2, supplemental, and the CAP is corrective action plan. So there's
Can I ask another question? That is.
yeah, I just wanted, the 140, does that represent completed projects?
yes,
Okay,
And
Yeah,
these
right.
they're not
projects-
projects. They are activities that were done within a project. The project type, if you go to the main box, is, I mean, we have like 79 sites, 140 projects. So yes. Is that making sense?
Yeah, these total dollars and so on that are being spent, does that represent the total amount that is being spent overall for these particular sites or projects? Or are there other funds from other sources that are also involved?
Other funds from other sources.
And
So a lot of these, there are also a mixture of EPA funding
Mhm.
or other types of funding.
so.
But what we're trying to show here
Mhm.
is that
This
the
is big
legislature,
dollars, isn't it?
yes, is that the legislature has subgranted to regional planning commissions $1 million a year. And what we're trying to show you is we are using those,
Every penny.
we're using every single penny.
We've also subgranted you much more than that. So at our best, we did 6.5 million. And
So let's not confuse the revolving loan fund program with the assessment program.
So let's just get to that because
Okay,
that is
so
really,
Let me just do one other thing.
Yeah.
If you look at the very bottom, you'll see estimated cleanup costs there. This is I did a quick poll because I knew I had to testify. So if you add up those numbers, this is just regional planning commission. Is that we're coming up with like over $30 million in cleanup costs. And this does not include projects that DEC is working on and that the Agency of Commerce is working on. There may be some duplication. What I'm just trying to get to is that the level of cleanup we have
It's
is,
huge.
Known sites.
yes, these are
Oh, yeah.
known
It
sites.
seems kind of low, actually. We've got Rutland Hotel site.
I got
5
10 million. I got 10 million from Rutland in there.
Yeah, yeah,
That
10 million, but that's just one.
Well, that's
site,
what
5 million.
Devin gave me from, so.
Okay.
it may be much higher, but what I think we're trying to paint a picture of is there's a huge need.
So
Well,
Huge.
some of
$2
it's
million in cleanup funding is not going to go very far. I also serve on the Agency of Commerce revolving loan fund committee. So we're the ones that review all the projects and we're out of money. And I don't know what Joan testified when she came here as far as the Agency of Commerce's program, cleanup program.
She did,
She did. But basically there's no money.
which is why they're asking for an additional 2 million.
Yeah, and that's not going to go very far.
And she also testified that that was primarily beneficial, loans were primarily beneficial for-profit developers, whereas grants are more beneficial for nonprofit developers. Is that right, David?
That's right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
beneficial. Can
That they're more useful. Well, you two can describe it. David, introduce yourself. If you want, pull your chair up and show address.
So hi, Senators. Dave Snedeker, Director of the Northeastern Vermont Development Association and in the Northeast Kingdom. We're also a regional development corporation in addition to being a regional planning commission. And I'll just briefly explain the need for the money for Benjamin. So back in 2018, we've been very successful in acquiring EPA dollars to do assessment work. So in 2018, we got $600,000 to work with municipalities as partners to do brownfield assessment activities, not cleanup activities. That went so well that in 2021, we got another $600,000 from the EPA to do the same work, and more assessments. And then in 2023, we got a $1 million EPA assessment grant, and that's what I'm going to go through these projects. But we also got $1 million in revolving loan fund money. Our loan fund money can be used as a low interest or no interest loan to for-profit developers, or it can be in a grant basically, or a forgivable loan to a municipality or a nonprofit. So, but as speaking to the need though, in addition to the funding we have here, this is all of our $1 million of right now tied up projects, and we're committed to see all these through. And we just accessed some funds from the Mount Scottney Regional Commission to do some newer assessment activities. But we did have a $1.2 million assessment application into EPA in November. We don't expect to hear anything until May. But we also had a $20 million application in with the town of St. Johnsbury and Rural Edge, our affordable housing provider, to do infrastructure and housing development only. And because of the keywords that were in that funding opportunity, climate, equity, justice, we know now that it's dead. So we're not going to get that money at all. We're still crossing our fingers about the assessment money, but if we don't get that, then we're limited to whatever the state can provide.
Got it. And so when you were saying we, David, you were talking Northeast Kingdom alone,
Yes,
those.
in partnership with our town and this is the grant, we did a really smart thing and partnered with our nonprofit housing provider. And our money's
I
always
mean, Rural Edge.
Rural Edge.
Yeah.
So the good thing about brownfields money, it's always that first in money for any developer, whether it's a for-profit developer or nonprofit developer. And it just saves money. They don't have to put these dollars in to the project in advance, and it saves money for other things.
Right.
So
So Thomas, you have
I guess what I was gravitating around, similar to my colleagues across the table, is I think we're heading towards very austere times. I think with the federal funding holes that are coming our way, we there's not going to be money lying around. And so what I'm really interested in is how can we reduce the mandatory expenses by relaxing some of the Vermont above and beyond regulations. And so that's where I'd welcome thoughts from experts like yourselves. What could we change in Vermont to require less cost burden to remediate brownfield sites consistent with what the federal standards are? But I'll just leave it there.
So I'll take a step.
Yeah.
So we work with our qualified environmental professionals, Montrose Environmental, they're a national company. They work in all 9 EPA regions. And they have told me before that Vermont standards are often higher than the standards in other states where they do work. So it would be easy enough for me to track down some examples of that and bring that back to the committee. That would be helpful.
And to the extent that they're also able to guide you on how much less expensive it might be to do certain types of projects in one state compared to what it would cost in Vermont. That may give us an idea as to if we are leaving money on the table, how much is it?
Yeah, and further variances within the New England region, but also across the country. So I'll see what I can track down.
That would be helpful. And I think that will be a balance between, because I know the soil remediation piece is going to be with Senate Natural, we're really the money. And I guess what I'm hoping for all of us to understand is that independent of so some of the Vermont standards will definitely clearly impact some of the costs. The need is still so substantial that how would you address that if we have to look at the out from the government and what we know you need?
We all want to save money, but even if we reduce our standards to whatever a national standard is, it's not going to lessen the cost to do these cleanups by that much. If it's 10 or 15, maybe 20%, that would.
Well, I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah, I get that. But the other thing I also want to understand is with passage of 181 last year, the Act 250 bill,
Right.
there is a focus on us trying to develop housing in our downtowns
Right.
and in our areas where they're served by sewer and water. And so, those areas, generally speaking, are not green fields. So we're going to run into brownfield related issues. So if we want to build housing and we want to do it in our areas that are served by sewer and water, that we're going to have to address brownfield issues, or we're not going to be able to develop that kind of housing.
What percent of the 30 million would you say are in downtowns and village centers? A significant percent.
It's pretty large. I can
Right.
try to get that information from you.
But I think what I am understanding and appreciating is that the 2 million revolving loan fund is great for one set of developers, but not all. And that what you would really appreciate is grant money in addition to the revolving loan money.
So the model that we use in our area is we have a nonprofit buy the property. We use the nonprofit to be able to access grant funds to do the cleanup. Once the cleanup is been completed, we sell the property to a for-profit developer.
Got it. Which is so that's how you take advantage of the grant monies, which are better for nothing.
Right.
Got
So
it.
then we can use grant and low interest loans.
And if the regional planners would really like to put what ask on the table for brownfield grants?
We would like $4 million for the ACCD revolving loan fund program, which is
So
existing.
they've asked for 2, as you
And
know.
they asked for 2. And the governors recommend there is no additional funding for the assessment program. And we're asking for $2 million in the assessment program.
And that's in the grants.
And that's the grant. Yeah, that's the $1 million.
So 2 million in grants and 4 million
4 million.
for the doubling what the governor's asked for.
Yes.
Or what ACCD has asked us for.
Right.
For the revolving loan
Yeah.
fund. Because you're out of money.
Right.
Right.
Sorry, it was so convoluted that I was talking about.
It's not convoluted. I think it's all helpful to us understanding it.
But I'll get you that soils information. I can get that.
Great. And we'd love to, I think, have you, if there are more, David, you're going to follow up on a couple things as well. Which would be
Yes.
great.
And then
Anything else? I'm happy to go another minute.
well, this was the agenda from our recent Brownfield Advisory Committee meeting, and on the left, sidebar, I kind of highlighted priority housing projects and places like
Is
that.
that this, your handout here, David?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you look at site number 4, it's obviously focused on housing. This is a former true temperate site. They used to make tool handles in downtown St. Johnsbury. A large 8-acre industrial site. We've done all the assessment work we can. The town went out and got their own $1 million grant for multi-purpose activities. And then we're going to follow it up with a loan of our own to work with the for-profit developer. So right now the town's going to be the owner. The for-profit developer is waiting for it to be cleaned up. And then he's going to put in 30 to 40 units of new housing.
And it's a priority housing project.
It is.
So it's ready to go.
It will be, yeah.
And how soon do you see this actually happening, David?
The town's taking ownership in the spring. And then the cleanup would happen, which it's surprisingly, given the former use and the size of the site, it's not that as great as we expected. So the town's money should cover it in addition to whatever loan money we got.
That's great.
Yes. And then if you look at site number 7, which is also,
So sorry, the cleanup is expected to be finished by,
it probably wouldn't be done until 2026 sometime. And there's another site in St. Johnsbury. It's called Packer Court Development. It's a rural edge project. It's up on Main Street where some buildings have burned down. They're putting in 26 new units of housing for seniors. Our money, we probably put about $100,000 of assessment money into that site. And so it's good. Yeah.
Thomas, you're ready to go.
I have,
And we have caucus in 10 minutes. I know. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is very helpful.
Yeah. Any questions, you can come back to me.
Give me what